Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Into the Outer Realms. I'm going to continue with the practice that I started last week. A lot of people seem to appreciate it. I am not going to say Happy Thursday like we usually do. Obviously, the world is in a struggle, in an ideological struggle, in a military struggle, in a socioeconomic political struggle. A lot of the events this week were stunning, and I think we're all hooked. But we're gonna take a break from all of that for the next hour. It's part of the goal of this show. We're gonna go into the outer realms, and we're gonna talk with George Yuhasz, a very talented author, a nature advocate, traveler. He's been to 124 countries, and maybe he'll share with you what's upcoming for him. So I'm really very excited about this. Tanya and I read his book, Imagine That, The Magic of the Mysterious Lights, on Saturday morning Storytime Live. I've posted that a couple of times. I did a very favorable review of this book because it's wonderful. So all of you out there with children, if you're teachers, if you're grandparents, fostering the imagination is the most important thing. I have my old friend Albert Einstein here sticking out his tongue. He said imagination is more important than knowledge. So he's gonna stay with us tonight and take this journey with us. So I'm gonna roll the opening as I always do. We'll come back, we'll do the bio, and we'll get right into it.
There exists a realm beyond our wildest dreams, a realm beyond reality that the gatekeepers and guardians have always told us consists of nothing but tricks of the eye, weather balloons, swamp gas, sand cranes, fairy tale myths of monsters, crackpot conspiracy theories, and desperate cries for attention.
We know this realm exists, and it's just beyond the horizon. The preset path, the well-worn walkways where the cynics want us to stay.
Instead, give this a listen. Put on your headphones, adjust your volume, close your eyes, and fasten your mental seatbelts, because the twilight-tinged turnoff from reality's alluring highway is looming just ahead.
We're about to leave the plane of the easily explained, couldn't possibly be's, and the no way I just saw what I saw's, for the spaces and places where everything is possible, and if you stay long enough, even probable. We're about to take a journey into the outer realms.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to Into the Outer Realms, where the paranormal and the supernatural become the normal and the natural. And of course, imagination is a huge, huge part of that. So my guest tonight is George Yuhasz, and I would like to read his bio right now. George Yuhasz is a passionate advocate for the preservation and protection of our natural world. A proud father and grandfather, lifelong learner, and world traveler, 124 countries, folks. He especially delights in sharing with children and adults his knowledge and enthusiasm for appreciating the joy and wonder of connecting with nature. A graduate of American University Schools of International Service and Government, he also holds an MA degree in psychology from the University of Northern Colorado. George is a former U.S. government special agent, intelligence officer, and contractor. He's worked in the private sector as an investigator and security consultant. A special joy in his life was coaching the Allegheny College cross-country team for 14 fall seasons. His first book, Imagine That, The Magic of the Mysterious Lights, has won numerous awards for children's fiction, juvenile fiction, and children's inspirational stories. George lives in the Blue Ridge Mountains of Western North Carolina and is currently working on a suspense novel. So lots there to unpack and discuss with George. George, welcome to Into the Outer Realms.
Thank you, Joey, for that kind introduction and for having me on your show.
Yeah, it took a little bit to get it done. You travel so much, and several weeks ago, high winds in the Blue Ridge Mountain. Yeah, there's always a price to pay for living somewhat rurally. So welcome. Hello, Ronald. Hello, Mario. Good to see you. So in your bio, Christopher Isherwood, a good friend of mine, is portraying Christopher Isherwood when I am going to be Allen Ginsberg all of June on a tour. And he talks about life happening in 7-year cycles. And I've read that in other books and that kind of thing. And it seems that your life has changed as you've gone along. You haven't been afraid to reinvent yourself, so on and so forth, which makes for an interesting person. So just very briefly, your life after college, as a special agent, intelligence officer, contractor, investigator, security consultant. What got you into that, and what brought you out of it?
Good question. I was recruited out of university to begin my career in government, and spent almost 40 years in a combination of those different positions that you mentioned. Started as a special agent in law enforcement, and that kind of morphed into intelligence work. And when my government career was over, I spent some time as a contractor, as well as work in the private sector as an investigator and security consultant. So that spanned a period of about 40 years.
Wow.
And now it just feels good to be at peace and to be creating. And as you mentioned, sort of reinventing myself in a number of areas. And I have more time now to spend in nature. You mentioned the travel. A lot of countries, both was able to, very blessed to be able to visit, spend time in, both professionally as well as leisure travel over the years. And it's just been a real joy to me. And again, I feel very blessed to have had those opportunities to do that.
Right. So 124 countries. So impressive. And so you did some through work, you do some through leisure now. I always, when people say, what was your favorite or what's your top 10 or all? So let's put it this way. What are the 3 or 4 countries or places that most impacted you when you spent time there, when you visited there?
Most impacted me. I would say in terms of natural beauty, the greatest impact on me was probably Costa Rica. So diverse, topographically, wonderful people. It's a nature's paradise, and so many different species of flora and fauna. Spent a great amount of time there over the years. Again, both professionally earlier on, and then later on, just visits and enjoying that beautiful country.
It was probably 2 years ago. I reviewed a book that was a study of people who live well into their hundreds. And Costa Rica is a place where they dance and they laugh and the food is that your experience, that it's just a place where you feel like people really get life and make the most of it there?
Yes, indeed. Joie vivre is very alive and well there. People take a lot of joy out of living and practice that art as well, if not better than anyone.
Yeah. So guys, if you're looking to live a long time, that's a place to study, to visit and look at, enjoy. Good evening, Cial. Good evening, Sharon. So a couple of other places that maybe impacted you in a different way, a culture that taught you something about human nature or something.
Yeah. So Laos would be another country. Landlocked, war-torn, besieged by a lot of adversities through the centuries. I had the good fortune to visit there, I guess it was just before 9/11, maybe a year before 9/11 or so. And I was just struck by the gentleness of the people. Again, just beautiful, beautiful landscape physically, Um, and a lot of magic there. I know we're going to talk more about magic, but I'm going to give you one episode. I was staying at a little hotel in the heart of Luang Prabang, the old provincial capital. And early one morning, in fact, the hotel's name was the Via Santi. I remember, it just came to mind. Early one morning, I went for a walk. And about a couple blocks or so from the hotel, I walked into a courtyard. And immediately to my left, there was an open door to a building, and monks were inside chanting. And in the courtyard itself, straight ahead, there was a variation of volleyball being played by 8 young fellas. And what they were doing was passing the ball strictly with their feet. And you heard this whap, 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 back and forth. Very just athleticism, superb athleticism. And all of a sudden, all this is taking place. All of a sudden, a little boy entered the courtyard, and he had a stick with a inner tube wheel pushing the stick along. And I just stopped, and all this, visually, audibly, all this going down, and I just went, wow, this is magic. And I even remarked to myself at the time, I said, this is magic.
Yeah.
Very, very special. It was just a very special moment.
Now, George, the audience has probably heard me say this before, but I believe that there's an inverse ratio of how much you've traveled, how many different cultures you've experienced, places you've lived, and the size of your opinions. For you to be on the other side of the world and to have that wow moment, I think that speaks to, we really get a sense of that we're more alike than we are different. I mean, here we are in the midst of something almost unimaginable. Like I had this funny feeling, we're not going to go politics, but I had this funny feeling at a certain level, Putin, because of 40 years of what he's done, he had to go in. But still, the devastation, all that. So do you agree with that the travel and the amount of travel and the amount of cultures that you've seen have shaped your worldview to make you more of a citizen of the world?
I think so. Certainly, it's imbued me with a lot of sensitivity and awareness. And again, back to magic. I have a thing about magic, obviously, but it's everywhere. If you take the time to look around you, to use your senses, and just let them whip at your being, so to speak. You'd be amazed at what you can take in. It's incredible.
Oh, I'm so excited to continue this conversation. So we're going to talk about your book. So when did you know that I want to be a writer? What was it?
Well, I've thought about being a writer ever since I was in grade school, and I used to write these little plays for my class. I think it was in 4th grade, and they were sort of little vignettes, detective, where a detective solved the problem, and then there were protagonists, all this kind of stuff, and that's probably where it started. But I got away from it, between school and career, but it was always on my mind. And I happened to be at my granddaughter's 7th birthday party, and there were kids playing in the backyard, and Rapunzel came, and I'm watching the kids focus their attention on her as she told them a story and engaged them. And I'm looking around at the scene. If you look at the cover of the book, a lot of what's on that cover, the big trees and so on, was borrowed from that. And I decided, and that seemed magical. I decided at the time that I would write a story for my granddaughter. I didn't think about writing a book, publishing a book, anything like that. I just wanted to do something special for my granddaughter, whose name is Evelyn, by the way, is the protagonist in the book.
Yeah.
And so I went about doing that. And over the course of, it was about a year and a half or so, by the time you write it and then go through all the publishing stuff, I reached a point where I thought, well, I've come this far. I started looking into publishing and specifically self-publishing. And I said, I think I can do this. And so I did it. And little did I realize, Joey and audience, it just took on a life of its own. I had no idea what I was in for starting this, but it's been grand. And I'm a very private person, really. But my publisher, the rep that I was working with, told me, she said, "You've got to get on social media, George, because that way you'll engage with other authors. People will learn about your book, on and on." And so I had to learn that world as well. But it's been very rewarding and has given me a lot of joy.
So, and I don't want to butcher the first name, but Egla Bartolini?
Egli Bartolini, yes.
How did you meet your illustrator?
Well, she was recommended to me. She was not my first choice as an illustrator. And it turned out that my first choice was unavailable. She had too many projects going on. And so I asked around, and Egli was recommended to me. The only problem was she lives in Italy. So what I had to do is, and this is where report writing and all this comes into play, I guess, for my career, I had to write detailed descriptions of all the scenes that are in the book. I created those, and then she interpreted those in her art.
They're wonderful. The colors, the layouts. There's a bit of a resemblance here. I'm guessing that was on purpose.
Well, that's my son.
Oh, that's terrific. That's terrific. So everyone looks fairly close.
My daughter-in-law looks pretty much like that too. She's
I was flipping through there. Yeah, there she is. That's wonderful. M. Night Shyamalan wrote Lady in the Water as a story that he told to his daughters over the course of many, many nights. I think one way or another, as an author, my stories are reflective of my children, especially of my wife, of our relationships. That's what I believe. A.A. Milne, it was the same thing with Winnie the Pooh. And those labors of love really show up. So you write the book, you go through the whole publishing process. Give the audience a synopsis of the story.
It begins with a little girl who is fascinated by the night sky. She wants to know more about the planets, the constellations, the stars, and she begins to see lights in the sky that are a mystery to her. And she realizes that she's really the only one that can see them. And what ensues is a magical encounter, and it leads her to learn more about imagination, goal setting. And I won't spoil the book for our audience, but there's a lot of life lessons in it. Some subtly related, others more prominently. And that's go
ahead and get it, folks. That's good. We don't want to give away the ending. Here's what I loved, and I love this more and more as I've done about 250 reviews now. I read about 80 books a year, so it's hard to surprise a veteran reader, and you really surprised me because there were some interesting expectations because of my background. So as the audience, of course, knows, Tanya and I, primarily we mediate between the living and the dead, examine survival of consciousness, but also we had some experience that really led us into ufology. So when I saw the magic of the mysterious lights, you think of the Phoenix lights, you think of these mysterious lights in the sky. So I went in with an expectation, and again, without giving anything away at all. You never quite define what the lights are, and I think that's wonderful. Especially because Evelyn's the only one who sees them, so they're special and specific to her, but yet with these universal messages. So you're very modest. So I'm not going to put you on the spot. Like, you don't have a bunch of the gold medals and the ribbons and all those things all over your book, as a lot of authors do. But it has won numerous awards for children's fiction, juvenile fiction, children's inspirational stories. So I just want to congratulate you, because it's a beautiful book, and I'm glad you're being recognized for it.
That's very kind, Joey. I appreciate that. That kind of moves me. I never expected to receive any of these accolades. I just wanted to write a book for my granddaughter.
Yeah.
And it was quite an event when I presented it to her at her 9th birthday. That was everything.
Folks, is this the kind of story that we need tonight in the midst of everything going on? The timing was just perfect. So, of course, I talked about Einstein, showed him here with his tongue hanging out. I just love this. It's a great reminder. I have a picture of Einstein. It's one of my favorite things. I've been carrying it in my wallet since I was in college. So about 35 years of him with Charlie Chaplin. And that is really the yin and the yang of it. So the role of imagination in our lives, speak to that as much as you want to.
Imagination is not something that you pull in to yourself from out there. Everybody has it inside. And it's just a matter of tapping into it, giving yourself permission, if you will, to exercise imagination. We can all do it. And as I mentioned earlier, magic is everywhere. I mean, part of imagination, when you sort of dissect the word, you have some interesting things in there. You know, you have imagine, you have magi, which is a really interesting one. It just conjures up a lot of things, but it's a true gift to all of us, and it can enable us to follow our dreams. It can take us places we've never been before. It can help us solve problems. It can help us create. And I could go on and on, but
as much as you, I mean, it's very provocative, because I've been an educator for a really long time, other than being a director and an actor and a writer and all, especially working with young people. And the school system and teaching to the tests and all these different kinds, imagination has suffered. I think too, sometimes with the video games, a lot of the decisions are kind of made for you, or you're in a stricture kind of thing. And so when I get into a situation where kids are really remembering their imagination, because I've written several books for schools, and the idea of when you get a bunch of kids together and they're improvising, right, which is an expression of imagination. I have an idea and now I'm going to express it, but I don't have a script and I don't have a book, and they make their own rules and they hold each other accountable for those rules. Have you seen, you've been around so much, and are there a couple of different questions? Are there differences in places in the world with how prevalent imagination is, how much it's respected, have there been places you've gone where, wow, imagination is just a coin of the realm?
Yes. I would say in Ireland, let it rip. I mean, that's just a beautiful place in terms of imagination. And when you talk about the troubles in that country and all the things it's gone through in its history, one of the beautiful things about imagination, and I think it helps sustain the spirit of a people, if we want to look at countries or tribes or whatever, imagination represents to me the greatest freedom. And for those who aspire to that, in whatever form, in whatever situation, imagination is there for you. I love that.
I do too. That's wonderful. And I'm not surprised. I'm fascinated with the Scottish culture, and I portray a Scottish pirate. And those were harsh conditions, but great stories, great cultural stories, big myths that people then pick up and enact. And Ireland is very much like that. Now maybe would be a good, do you want, if you don't want to, you don't have to, but you have some upcoming trips that you were telling me about. Do you want to share with the audience a little bit about those? Or
Sure, I don't mind. I have one coming up next month. I'll be going to the Peruvian Amazon, and we'll be visiting a research station there, and spending a little time more leisurely on a boat, but again exploring flora and fauna in that area. In June, I mentioned to you I'm going to be traveling to the Maritimes in Greenland and Iceland, and working my sort of an arc in the North Atlantic, if you will, and working my way around to the Orkneys and the Shetlands and some of the outer islands. And we'll end up in Ireland, which I'm very much looking forward to, Scotland, and then finishing up in London. I'll spend a few days there, and I'm working on connecting with some author friends that I met on Twitter and Facebook. And again, I can't express to you again how much joy, and surprisingly so, how much joy connecting with folks on social media has been for me. It's just another world, and it's been great.
It is. It's one of those things it can be a hazardous place, but it's what you make of it. And it's the imagination to say, I spend a lot of time on social media because I want to get the word out about, what I'm working on and who we're talking to and all those kinds of things. So I think that's really important. So when you talk about the Peruvian Amazon and flora and fauna and all, I think of everything from the Lost City of Zed, which absolutely fascinates me, the Royal Geographic Society. I think of Wade Davis and the quest for ayahuasca and all of that, and William S. Burroughs, all those kinds of things. Is this a return trip for you? And how have you spent a lot of time in the Amazon?
I won't say I've spent a lot of time, but I've been there, I guess 5 times.
Oh, wow.
And the durations have varied. Again, split between professionally as well as just leisure travel. The last few times have been leisure travel, and have just been great. I'm looking forward to getting back there. I have an addiction, I think, to wild, remote, and more desolate places, and my family and friends, they just kind of shake their head, but I think they understand me.
That definitely sounds like Lost City of Zed to me. Let's see here. You've mentioned magic several times. You mentioned magi, which of course you think of magicians and all of that kind of stuff. Where does that imagination magic line kind of exist for you? And what does magic mean to, like, what qualifies as magic?
I guess we could begin by asking the question, is magic real or not?
Mm.
And again, I'm just taking this off the top of my head. I think you can look at it both ways. Magic can be something that is both created as well as something that maybe can occur happenstance, as a surprise, as a unexpected event. My grandmother, who was Native American, she's from old Oklahoma territory, and eventually worked her way back east, the bride of a wildcatter. She raised me, and I spent a lot of time. She had me in the forest and the woods as much as possible when I was a boy, and I spent a lot of time there. And I was very fortunate to be raised by her. She taught me a lot about plants and animals and the magic, the real magic that's in the forest. And she was a healer and taught me a lot about healing, natural medicine, and the ritual associated with it, which was from her upbringing and her tribe. Personally, I feel magic is very real. And it's something that's a great part of my life. I can't go anywhere in nature, let's say, whether it's in a backyard and you see fireflies at night. And you know, I had to put fireflies in the book.
Yeah.
I'll give another hand.
Yep.
Or deep in the Amazonian rainforest and listening to a myriad of night sounds and how all those come together in just a wild, wonderful cacophony of if that isn't magic, I don't know what is.
Right. I've studied for decades now. I've studied shamanism, from Hawaiian shamanism to the Siberian shamans in Altai, and certainly in South America, curanderos and brujas and all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And like I mentioned, Wade Davis, so the whole connection with Yahe, ayahuasca, you know, and that nature grokking, Grokking, Hawaiian shamans call it. And it is that one of the most profound experiences I've ever had was just sitting, and how they teach it is listen to the sounds beneath the sounds. And I would think in the Amazonian rainforest, there must be myriad sounds that come out when you drop your listening to an interior listening. Yeah.
It's absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
I can't get enough of it. I mean, even here in Western North Carolina, you can go out in your screen porch. You know, there's very little light except from the stars, and you just listen. And it's also probably one of the most soothing, relaxing things that you can do. If you want to achieve calm and peace in your life, I mean, certainly you can meditate, you can use self-hypnosis, you can use a number of techniques or modalities to achieve that. But I guess, again, personally, for me, those other things have never quite reached the healing and soothing and calming level of being immersed in nature, and or being able to listen to all those sounds, or even see the different subtle movements, you know, maybe just a glimpse of a squirrel or a fox's tail, things like that.
Yeah.
Or maybe a direct confrontation with a bear, you know, which that'll get your pulse rate up real quick.
It will. I had one of those when I was 12 years old in the Poconos.
Lucky you.
I will say
and
that
you're here.
Yeah, yes. And he stayed at a I say he. The bear stayed at a distance. It was up on a ridge, and we were down back behind the house, and we heard it. But gorgeous. Or we had 3 acres in West Virginia in the holler, and out of the mist in the back came this albino buck, just huge rack, and he was gorgeous. And that felt that felt like magic.
Yes.
That felt something like out of an Arthurian legend, and it came out of the time and back into the mist. And so I understand what you're talking about. So you're, as I said in your bio and in the, the promo for this, you are an advocate for the preservation and protection of the natural world. You've spoken about it a little, but what motivates you to be that advocate?
You can't help being inspired by the beauty and majesty of the natural world, and also to be struck by how dire its survival is confronting us at this time, particularly. I mean, in the last several decades, as one salient example, we've lost 1/3 of our global bird population.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no other way to describe that except it's tragic. And if anyone is looking for motivation, and I would urge our audience, those of you who haven't done so, and I imagine there's a lot of you folks out there who are really up on this stuff and read and care and so on. But if you haven't availed yourself of what's going on globally, I mean, we can go from climate change, species extinction, and we can talk about avarice, greed, profound avarice or greed on one hand, and on the other, total apathy. And then along that continuum, that spectrum, you've got people in between. So, where are you? I mean, I think that's something that all of us should ask, because we're all connected. I mean, I'm not telling folks anything new here. I guess I'm just, my passion gets the better of me sometimes. So please excuse that.
No, the audience knows that I am. I get very passionate about things, so I'm low key to match your energy tonight. But we can get a little passion. You bring up something very profound to me, and that was the idea of apathy. Sometimes when we're those of us who are being spiritual and trying to stay connected, and all, we go, well, humanity is just a cancer on the planet, and Mother Earth is going to way out survive us. So, okay, this will happen, and maybe we'll all learn our lesson about. But that is a form of apathy.
Yeah,
that is absolutely a form of apathy, because
yes.
It takes us away from action.
Well, it takes us away from action, to be sure, and whatever you call it, apathy, complacency. The worst threat to the planet is to do nothing.
Right.
It's the worst threat. I mean, you can talk about poaching, you can talk about even climate change, but if nobody does anything, and again, it begs the question, well, what do I do? Well, I think that there's countless opportunities out there to engage in doing something, whether your show, Joey, I'm sure is a great representative and advocate for bettering life on this planet. However, joining organizations, recycling, writing a book. I could go on and on and on.
Yeah.
But there are opportunities. Everyone can do something, and it brings to mind a poem. And if you'll indulge me for a moment, I think it's a great poem, and talk about inspiration. It's inspired me for years and years, ever since I was a teenager. But it's a verse from Longfellow's The Builders, and it goes. Nothing useless is or low. Each thing in its place is best. Let's see if I can recall this. And what seems but idle show strengthens and supports the rest. I love that, because it doesn't matter how great or so-called how small the effort or the ability, or it all counts. So I kind of said my piece on that.
Yeah, and beautifully said. So Longfellow, I think of Thoreau, Emerson, Walt Whitman.
Transcendentalism.
Yes, yeah, that's part of it, or just that nature. I sing the body electric, leaves of grass. I just read Longfellow's works a couple years ago. Again, you're going to be heading up north to around Arcadia and all of that, and his epic poem there, and that's wonderful. So here I think in the last 15-20 minutes of the show, let's talk shop, writer to writer. I think that'll be wonderful. So you decide to tell this story to your granddaughter, and it kind of takes a life of its own and all. So you have to cross that threshold to storyteller to writer. What were some of the difficulties, George, that you personally had to overcome in order to make that journey?
I think to begin with, Joey, finding the time
to
write the book in the first place. I was engaged in some other things, and but yet I was driven to complete it. And I made it a point of just putting aside blocks of time and writing passages and self-editing and all that kind of stuff. And I guess in the journey, coming to the point where you decide, I think I can publish this book or this story. And then it was finding a publisher. I mean, there's just a million of them out there. And how do you separate the wheat from the chaff and find the right fit and all of that? And that took quite a bit of research. I took my time with it, and came up with what turned out to be a very, very good fit. And then I was surprised at the technical aspects of publishing a book. These things that I had no idea. I didn't know what to do, but fortunately had the expertise of a publishing company that was into indie publishing, independent publishing. And I sort of learned along the way, but realized, like you do in so many things you encounter in life, you go into a new realm, so to speak, and you realize how much you don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, you just shake your head and go, wow, this is way above my pay grade, so to speak.
Right.
But managed to get through all that, and then you're confronted with, if you want to be, with marketing.
Right.
But I had to make a kind of an interesting decision with that. I thought, well, I've written the book for my granddaughter. It's published. It's out there. Sure, it's on Amazon and so on. What do I do from here? Do I just, let it ride? Or do I make some type of effort? And I had to ask myself the question, what is it that you really want to accomplish? Is just writing the book for your granddaughter enough? Or is there something else that's out there that you want to achieve? And I finally answered the question with one word, and that word is legacy.
Oh, wow.
And I thought, the book was well received. And this is before any rewards or anything like that. Friends had read it, bought it, all that. And people from the internet responded, from Amazon who had purchased it there, people I didn't even know. And I had to make the decision as to, am I going to try to market this book? And that's a altogether different world, in itself. And I decided, okay, in for a penny, in for a pound, I'm going to do my best, and by hook or crook, I'll find a way to do that, because what mattered to me and still matters to me, at this point, I'm more interested in getting the book out there in the hands of children, in the hands of parents, in the hands of children, because I feel it's a good story. It's wholesome. It has good messages. And like you mentioned early in the program, especially now, it's something what we need.
Yeah.
And I'll use an example. I had a review written by a lady who invited her neighbors from next door to come over and her children to come over to read the book. It was like a little neighborhood reading.
Mm.
And this one lady came over with her children, and I got the sense that they'd fallen on hard times. And the review said that reading the story gave that family hope.
Mm.
And I can't tell you how moved I was by that. I said, yes. And I guess maybe to answer a question that may come up, I'll get ahead of you a little bit.
Sure.
Why am I doing this? That's why I'm doing it. And that's why I'm going to continue to write. So that's been quite a bit of the journey.
That's power. Hope is that we can make people laugh. We can educate people. We can get people stirred up and go out and do things. I'm going to spend 3 weeks. I got this crazy beard. It's a pain in the neck to take care of.
Looking good, Joy.
Thank you. But Allen Ginsberg, who went out and stirred things up and got people talking, and they remember him and all of that kind of thing. And I love all that. But the idea of I'm thinking in my life and my career, that's a precious thing when someone comes to you and they say your story, your performance, your play, your company gave me hope. So that's wonderful, and I'm not at all surprised. It is that kind of book where we if we can inspire people, and it's hard. I have children, you have grandchildren, the millennials and the Zs. They're hard to inspire. Their BS meter is very, very well attuned. They can be somewhat cynical. I doubt that that Evelyn is, and they can be, as an educator of high school and college kids. I'll say to them, "Well, guys, we just booked this great performance for 1,000 people," and they go, "Oh, great. Okay, when is that? I'll put it in my phone." I remember saying, "Man, what does it take to fire you guys up? What does it take to get you passionate?" "Oh, we just have too much going on to be passionate. We just got to do a thing at a time." And I'm thinking, for 16, 17, 18-year-old kids to not have that passion, to not be inspired, it keeps you getting up. And books like this, no lie, not pandering. My audience knows I don't pander. Books like this get people fired up. They get them inspired. And so thank you.
Thank you, Joe.
Yeah. My favorite question, I asked you to give me some questions to help me along with this conversation. As a writer, what would you choose as a spirit animal?
Well, even beyond writing, my spirit animal for a long time, Joey and audience, has been the fox. The red fox.
Yes, red fox.
Yeah. A highly adaptive being, very, very loyal and devoted to family, a real problem solver, can be a bit of a trickster, very clever, which that part has served me well back in my career.
That's
just a whole bunch of things come to mind with that. I'll tell you, it just flooded.
And that's
memory bank here. But yeah, and it's the red fox has been a being that I've encountered countless times, different places in my life, and sightings. and interactions at some interesting times in my life.
Yeah.
In its own right, a bit of magic that way.
Yeah, that's wonderful. The corvid, raven, crow, magpie, that's been in my car. I keep raven feathers. They're in every room of my house. The messenger from the other side, the
Yeah.
scavenger, the so smart. So raven's a big, but God's honest. Red fox is my second totem.
Wow.
And I love red fox. And when I lived in North Carolina at the water, because I had lived in this holler in West Virginia, would see all manner of animals, and this red fox shows up, comes down the alley between the police station and this other building, and just would come out in the road outside the window, and I would just watch. Sometimes I would go out. Sometimes, if I was really lucky, he'd come in the backyard. We'd have a little conversation, so to speak. You know what I mean? But one night I had a young man staying with me. I was mentoring him in this pirate reenacting, which is a passion of mine because it's all about social justice and empire and slavery and all those kinds of things.
Yeah.
And he was having a really hard time. And I said, well, listen, we're going to go outside and we're going to sit very still, and maybe Red Fox will show up tonight. Well, you know, he brought a friend for this young man. It was the only time in the 3 years that I was there that there were two of them. And brought a friend that night, and it was so profound. So that tickles me. My third one is Redtailed Hawk.
Yeah.
And Red-tailed Hawk will sometimes come and land within 2 feet of me. Usually, if I'm really in one of those transitional periods, really trying to puzzle something out, wondering, getting bogged down. You know what I mean? In the muck and the mire of daily living, forgetting imagination, forgetting inspiration. And here comes Red-tailed Hawk to go, if you want to soar, you want to fly, you want to get back up there out of the muck and the mire, make the decision.
It's interesting you mentioned that because later this afternoon, I was sitting outside and I noticed one alight in a tree, maybe about 50 feet away, looked at me for maybe about 15 seconds, and then flew at me and then veered off. So there you have it. There's a connection right there.
That's what happened. It was probably about a month and a half ago. Now my passion is starting to come up a little, but I looked out the back door to my back deck, and there's Red-tailed Hawk is up in the tree there. I stepped outside, and that's it, George. It came within 2 feet of me and went back up in the air. Similar.
Oh.
So I think it's bringing us a message of connection here, you and I.
Yes. Yes,
Oh,
indeed.
that's wonderful that happened today. Oh, that's great.
Mm-hmm.
So, because the hour's going so fast here, we have just a couple more minutes, kind of. But so imagination sparks inspiration. Where do you get the ideas for your stories?
The story I'm working on now is not a children's book. It's a suspense novel, and I'm a little better than halfway through it now. But I've been picking up some steam, and I'm hoping to finish it fairly soon. It's quite provocative, and I draw from some of my own experiences professionally, and then also from things happening in the world today. I won't talk a lot about that, but I do draw inspiration again from things that are around me, and I try to be as aware as I can be. Even if I just step outside to for a breath of fresh air and to look at the night sky before I retire, which I do that every night. Whether it's cloudy or full of stars or whatever, I like to step outside, take some breaths of fresh air, and just sort of gather in that power, if you will, and at the same time express gratitude for the day.
Right.
That kind of thing.
Wow. So to go from a children's book I've written. I'm working on my 9th and 10th novels right now. It is a labor. It's a labor of love. A lot of people never even get through their first one. Are you a plotter and an outliner, or are you a shoot from the hip kind of?
A little of both.
Oh yeah, right on.
Yeah, a little bit of both. I started out with outlining and developing a plot, but as I started writing, and I'm sure you've encountered this with as many of books as you've written, that just changed. Things.
Yeah.
Oh, I think I should do this a little differently. I like the impact of this better. You just make those decisions.
Yeah.
As you go.
Yeah. As a writing teacher, that's what you plot, you play. That's getting a lot of, it's tiring. So I don't engage in it. But now that it's self-publishing and people are just, they're putting out 5-6 books a year. Oh, here I am. I'm 35 years old and I've written 40 books. And you go, oh, wait, wow, whoa. So as a writing teacher, I'll come and go, well, I believe in plotting, planning. I believe in the 3-act model, all this. I'm a playwright where these things really come into play. And that all of that is getting a bad rap, but it's and you probably know this from everything that you've done in your life, being so learned and having a master's degree and all. If you start with the structure, if you start with the framework, you start with the tried and true, the formulas, that allows imagination and inspiration to run wild, but in a very beautiful way, because you do still have this fuzzy boundary. So that's wonderful. And it's a thriller.
Yes.
Those are the hardest to write, because then you're putting in mystery boxes and I have all kinds of formulas for writing through. I design escape rooms using film thriller format. So that's so impressive that you went from a children's book and going into a political sort of thriller. That's wonderful.
Well, Joey, that's another story in itself, and maybe we'll have a chance to talk about that later.
Yeah, well, we have a couple of minutes, and everyone is engaged. So, how did that come about? Is that what you meant?
Maybe it's a bit of catharsis from a personal standpoint to write about some things that I was personally involved with, but also just the challenge of doing it enters the picture. Writing a novel. But also being aware of things going on around me in the world. Again, it's part of that word legacy.
Yeah.
I care about what I write. I want it to be impactful. I want it to be useful and helpful. Those things are important to me. I'm not writing for money. I'm not writing for fame. I'm writing for something meaningful that's going to have impact, and it's going to be of lasting value. That's a lot of what my goal is.
And it seems you're achieving it, which is just wonderful. So let's do.
I'm a new writer. I mean, folks, imagine that. The Magic and the Mysterious Lights was my first book. I'm just getting started at this time in my life. So I don't want to impress upon anybody that I'm this veteran writer. I am not. Joey is the veteran writer. So.
Yeah, but you know what though? George, I'm very honored to be a developmental editor, proofreader, so on and so forth, mentor to several gentlemen. There are some ladies too, but they're by and large gentlemen, very much like yourself. They were very successful in business, high finance, government work, and then said, now I'm going to sit and I'm going to write, but I don't really know how to do this. So they hire people like me to mentor them, which is wonderful. But I have to say, the talent and the skill of going to school, I'm not a big fan of going and getting your master's degree in writing. Writing is one of those things like acting or filmmaking. You do it and you experiment and you learn in the field. But the life experience that folks like yourself bring to the table, that you can't, that's not something that you can fake.
That's right.
That's why in 25 pages, this book is so impactful, because there's layers to the wisdom, to the vision. It's not at all didactic, but boy, is it educational. And that distinction is very important to me. So folks, I will tell you, go out and get this. Go to New Mystics Reviews, read my review if you need convincing, but you just spent an hour with George. I'm sure you need no convincing. Is Amazon the best place to get this?
Amazon, Barnes and Noble are probably two of the best places. If anybody, I'm easily found on Facebook and Twitter. If anyone would like a copy, I can send them one and personally inscribe it and sign it if they would like that. I'm open to all those things. I just again, it's just important to me to get the story out there.
Yeah. And I'm humbled and honored to do my part to do that. George, you spent an hour of your time in your busy life with us. I want to say happy travels.
Thank you.
I hope there's lots of mystery and surprises and magic in your upcoming travels. If I can be of any aid as you're finishing up your novel, please stay in touch.
Thank you.
Let me know.
It
Yeah.
means a lot.
And last words, any last words before we sign off?
I'll thank you for this opportunity to be on your show.
You're welcome.
Very grateful for that. And I wish everyone in the audience well. And I encourage you, use your imagination, tap into that as much as possible. The rewards are great. The experiences that you will generate from doing that, great. Try it.
Terrific. That's what, guys, that's how we go from the paranormal and the supernatural to the normal and the natural, using our imaginations and believing in magic. You all, God bless, stay safe, be well. Next week, Tanya and I have some big announcements. She won't be with me, but we'll be sharing her new adventure. Which is, you guys know us, we do things, think out of the box, and we go where we're needed, and I'll tell you all about that. So thank you all for watching episode 107. I can't believe it. We're getting old. We're becoming veterans, and we're still learning. Good night, everyone. Take care.
Good night, everyone.